Welcome to the Provo Municipal Council meeting. We are gathered at the City Council chambers on 351 West Center, Provo, Utah. The time is 5:30 p.m. on January 18th, 2016. This meeting is being broadcast live on Provo City Channel 17 and channel17.provo.org, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. The council requests that citizens help maintain the decorum of the meeting by turning off electronic devices, being respectful to the council and others, and refraining from applauding during the proceedings of the meeting. We'll begin with a roll call with Mr. Parker.
Wayne Parker.
Corey Norman.
Dave Harding.
Dave Connect.
George Stewart.
Kim Santiago.
Dave Sewell.
Kate Van Buren.
Gary Winterton.
Brian Jones.
Matt Taylor.
Thank you. The opening prayer will be given by Christine Hale, and she will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful to gather here today and to come together and meet and discuss. We ask Thee to bless our council with the Spirit to lead and guide our community. We also ask Thee at this time that as we have many visitors coming to Provo, that they'll travel in safety. We ask Thee to bless us with open minds to help build up our community, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin with the spotlight on our downtown neighborhood that will be given by Brady Curtis of Downtown Provo, Inc. Thank you.
Thank you, council members, for having me, and thank you for your service and other city leaders. Very top. Just tip it down. Is that any better? Okay, so thanks for having me. I don't think I can talk about downtown and the downtown neighborhood, at least right now, without talking about the Temple Open House. We're well underway. That enormous project and event and undertaking, it's great. I hope and kind of suspect that maybe each of you kind of had a chance to see it. And if you haven't, I highly recommend it. An usher came into our little welcome center. We have a welcome center, a gift shop on University and Center in the Bell Room. Please come by and see that if you're kind of just strolling around downtown. But an usher came in and said that things were going great. The standby line is 5 to 10 minutes, so if you don't have a ticket, there is a chance to get in through the standby. They're sending through about 1,000 people per hour, and they did a trial run to up that to about 2,000 people per hour. And they're running from 7 a.m. to later at night, about 9. So we're expecting still around 15 to 20 plus thousand a day. And good news for everyone who's involved in the planning on that and the parking issues. I really haven't seen any problems or complaints about it. I did have one complaint about parking that was gone downtown, but we all acknowledge that was a good thing because the business was really busy. So we're happy and excited to have all the visitors. I think the downtown looks great. There's a lot of effort that went into the beautification. A lot of thought and a lot of people that kind of had hands in that. I know that a lot of the credit kind of goes to the city, and I think the recreation department did a lot in that. So I do want to give a thank you to them in that project. I heard that you guys did get a new restaurant guide. I did bring those. I did print 25,000 of them, so there's a lot. If you need an avenue or to get those out, come and talk to me. I'd be happy to kind of help you distribute those. We're Provo City's always kind of been a big supporter of its downtown neighborhood, and we're very, very grateful for your continued support. Thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting downtown Provo.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. If everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, are there any corrections or comments on the meeting minutes? These are from our council meeting on December 1st, 2015. I do have one correction on line 355, where the motion says Councilmember Kim Santiago moved to, it should say approve, Resolution 2015-68 as written. This was the motion to amend the general plan map for the Marvelous Catering property. So just need to include that word, approve. Thank you. Were there any other comments or? No? Okay, we'll look for a motion to approve. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Van Buren. All in favor? Thank you. The voting is unanimous in the affirmative. We will now have a presentation by the Covey Center. This will be presented by Mr. Paul Durden of the Center of the Arts Manager.
Once again, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity of being able to share something with the council, especially since we have so many new members of the council at this time. This is our third year going in and being able to share what's going on over in the Covey Center. With that, I don't have any personal presentations or anybody here. We have put it on video, so if you'll watch your screens, I'm going to turn to Dan and let him push the button and hope the button works. Thank Dan James, our technical director, for putting this together. As you can see, these are 4 events that are taking place in the next 3 weeks over in the Covey Center. Cirque Ziva is coming this Saturday. We'd like to invite everybody to come. The Wasatch Jazz Project, we've got Thurl Bailey coming in, and he's going to be doing a tribute to Frank Sinatra that night. We've got Snow White coming in, full ballet. The drops were done by Cassandra Barney, who helped her father, Jim Christensen, with the paintings in the temple. And our last thing, Air Supply, which is coming up on the 10th of February. Unfortunately, there's very, very, very few tickets. You can see the size of the audience that they had on this, and that was taken 3 months ago. So we're very excited. We've got a lot going on. Those are 4 of many, many things that are happening between now and then. So we invite you to come over as frequently as you possibly can. Any questions I can answer?
Do you want to explain to those in the audience how to get tickets?
Tickets are available at coveycenter.org or by calling the Covey Center ticket office at 801-852-7007. But the best way is just coveycenter.org and visit our website and see everything else that's going on. Anything else?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. That looks like there's a little something for everyone in each of those productions. The Air Supply took me back to high school, so thanks for that. Okay, thank you. So we'll now have a presentation of the Winter Commuter Award, and this will be given by Aaron Scablin of our Provo Bicycle Committee.
Thank you for allowing me to make this presentation. For the past 5 years, the Provo Bicycle Committee has recognized a dedicated bicycle commuter with the Golden Spoke Award at the annual Mayor's Bike to Work Day in May. Starting last year to remind folks that we can commute to work and to school by bicycle all year round, Even in the dead of winter, the committee inaugurated the Golden Spoke Winter Bicycle Commuter Award, and Canyon Bicycles has kindly acted as its sponsor. I was hoping that Officer Mark Crosby of the police department, who serves in that capacity on the bicycle committee and kindly hosts our monthly committee meetings at the community-oriented policing building, would be here to make this citation. No pun intended. But it appears that he has been detained for other work matters. So last year, the committee recognized Lexi Williamson, a BYU student who lives on the west side and who commutes to campus year-round by bicycle. This year, again, we would like to again recognize a West Sider. And to introduce his story, I would like to show this short clip from KSL News that was broadcast last report. Hopefully you remember the comment that Stan made. I've fallen in love with bike riding. I ride a lot, good weather, bad weather. You may have also noticed that he was wearing Adobe bike shorts. And I'd like to share what Stan's wife shared with me. Quote, when he made the goal to lose 100 pounds, he was already in the habit of using Frontrunner to get to work at Adobe. But he started riding his bike to get to the Orem train station and then from the Lehigh station up the hill to the Adobe building. At first, he biked 2 or 3 times a week, but before long, it was every day. He didn't commute that first winter, but he has ever since. He's pretty stubborn about riding, regardless of the weather. At first, he rode to the Orem station, but after several months, changed to the Provo station. It's a little bit further, but it's a safer route because going to Orem, to the Orem station, he would have to be on Geneva Road. And by the way, the 2 roads that Stan would like Provo to make safer for bicyclists are, no surprise, Geneva and 900 East. At first, he used the Lehigh station exclusively, but now he usually rides to the American Fork station at the end of his workday just to get more miles in and to lose more weight. Through most of that summer, he would ride from Lehigh all the way home, which is 26 miles, every Friday. In 2015, Stan rode just shy of 7,000 miles, both through commuting and recreationally. Becky continues by saying, Adobe pays for their employees in Frontrunner passes. This made all the difference in his decision to ride his bike to work. Otherwise, it would have been rather expensive, and it's hard to say if he would have developed the habit of using Frontrunner. Adobe's commuter check program, the bike incentive program, pays him $20 a month, which is very nice. Stan says he would commute anyway, even without that incentive, because he likes it. I think, though, that this commuter check program has had an indirect effect as well. Adobe has a cycling community, and that makes a difference when you have buddies at work that you share bike riding stories with. And in conclusion, Becky said the following, it is probably not exaggerating to say that bike commuting has saved Stan's life. Losing weight has increased the quality of his life immeasurably. The key to his successful weight loss has been his consistency, and that consistency has been facilitated by combining his exercise with his commute to work. He's in the best shape of his adult life. He loves to get out in the fresh air every single day, even in the dead of winter. So I'd like to congratulate Stan Paulson and invite him to come forward to accept this award, the 2016 Canyon Bicycles Golden Spoke Winter Commuter Award. And I hope that Provo residents will emulate Stan and that employers, including perhaps Provo City, will emulate Adobe by offering their employees incentives to use active transportation and to improve their health and their lives. And it's really a pleasure to present this award to Stan today, and also to congratulate him and Becky on their 25th wedding anniversary, which happens to be today. And here's to many more years of marriage and many more years of bicycle commuting. Congratulations, Stan. Thank you. And this is some swag from Canyons and a gift certificate as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scabland. Appreciate that. And congratulations on the award as well. Given me new motivation to get on my bike, but maybe not on the ice and snow. I'm still a little skittish about that. Our next item is a review of the 2015 Popular Annual Financial Report we call the PAFR. And this presentation will be given by Dustin Grabow, accountant in our finance department. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. So before you have the PAFR, which is the Popular Annual Financial Report. This is a report that we produce annually based on our comprehensive annual financial report. That report is 123 pages this year. This PAFR is about 18 pages. And so the idea is I think it's summed up best actually on the third page, the second to last paragraph. It says, as a municipality, we want to continue awareness, accountability, and transparency of the city's financial information. And we anticipate after reading the PAFR, community members will be reassured that public dollars are being used to build a better, safer, and stronger Provo. I feel that this PAFR is a good representation of our city's finances. It has two main components. There's kind of an overview of the city, which describes some of the detail of, in the first sections of the council, the heads kind of the departments, facts about the city itself, major events that have taken place, and kind of a breakdown of what the city does and what the things that we have in the city are. And there have been some exciting things, and I encourage you to read through it. The next section, which is the majority of the document, is kind of the financial analysis, which includes this on the screen is a statement of net position. There's a number of different ones going through each of the governmental and proprietary funds that you can see describe a high-level overview of how these different groups within the city are performing financially. Overall, the city is doing well and continues to do well. Revenues are strong, and our expenses are not outgrowing our ability to pay for them. And we continue to improve as we make fiscally prudent decisions to increase our city's financial stability. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about it or the availability of the PAFR at this time.
Are there questions from the council members? Mr. Harding?
It's not so much of a question, but just kind of, I'm curious what this financial report might look like if we adopt policy-based budgeting, priority-based budgeting with the different programs and whatnot. And just as I was reading over this, the idea particularly behind this financial report is that transparency and that ability to understand, and which is the goals of what we've been talking about. So as I was reading, I was kind of trying to imagine what it might look like once we've implemented those policies.
A lot of the organization of this document is based more on accounting standards, and these standards are kind of universally applied, and this is more of a financial report. And I think there would be an opportunity to report based on those programs. I think the larger opportunity is in our budget document, and then providing possibly even a citizen's budget document that would help us detail some of those things proactively. But I definitely think there's an opportunity for us to be able to detail the performance based on those different areas as we choose to develop them and identify those. And I think that would be a great opportunity.
I had a question on page 8, the pie chart that's here. What does oh no, this is a different one. No, that's the right one. So the 16.3, what does that, that's other. You've added other and miscellaneous. Okay.
So this was identified earlier today, and so we realized there was a formatting error where one of the labels was left off. So that's 16.3. That other revenue sources is grants and miscellaneous revenues. And so now on the website, actually, you can go and find the corrected PAFR that has that label. So
Okay.
I apologize for that.
Great, no, that's okay. And then my other question is on, let's see, get back to my notes. This was another point that I made earlier was the general fund lists Mountain Vista as a department, and I just wondered how that got so down here where it talks about the departments within the general fund. Sorry, I didn't put the page number as I was reading through. But Mountain Vista was listed as one of those. So it's on page 8, same page, just up a little higher, where it says.
So each of those areas are, accounting-wise, we account for them independently, but for reporting purposes, we aggregate them into the general fund. And so usually they're just not large enough or significant enough to warrant their own financial reports. But from an accounting standpoint, we track them independently so that we could give you specific numbers for any one of those activities.
Okay.
But based on generally accepted accounting principles, we aggregate them together.
Okay, and so the PAFR would have the exact way that the money was spent within the Mountain Vista Fund or the Winterfest Fund or those funds?
I think the PAFR has it even aggregated as well, and so we could provide a supplementary information if you had specific questions about it. But because the funds are relatively small and fall within the confines of what we would consider general fund activities, it's all aggregated in that general fund number. And
okay.
So, if you have more questions, we'd be happy to provide more information.
Yeah, it would just be interesting. I would be interested to know what those funds were used for in the Mountain Vista Fund. That's the only one that I was unclear about how that would have been used, but the other ones are pretty straightforward. Because Mountain Vista is a business park. It's an area, and I don't know if it's like cleaning up the land or if I don't know what that would be used for.
First of all, the guidelines are is that the funds are not specifically restricted, that we're to include them in the general fund. So that's the primary reason that they're part of the general fund. The other thing is that we have some money that's been collected and some activity that's related to Mountain Vista that's sitting there, but it's just sitting there as fund balance right now. We're not really spending it. It's setting aside in a separate fund for purposes related to economic development and Mountain Vista. Okay. But the actual budget, there's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money that's there either. I think it's around $100,000, but it's just sitting there designed for economic development purposes, and it's part of the general fund in the PAFR and also the PAFR. And we're happy to sit down and go through that with you if you'd like in more detail too.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? All right, thank you. The public comment segment of this meeting is an opportunity for any person in attendance to comment on matters that do not appear as a public hearing on the agenda. All items are scheduled for public hearing. Should you wish to, all items today are scheduled, the two, correct? Yeah. So should you wish to make a comment at the podium, please speak into the microphone and begin by stating your name and city of residence. Should you not wish to speak, but instead to have your statement read aloud by the recorder, please provide her with a copy of that statement. Those who speak should do so courteously and briefly. Please be aware that the council and administration will not take any formal action on the matters that arise during public comment, but they may respond informally as appropriate. Also, please be aware of other means for addressing the council and administration directly regarding issues of concern by email, telephone, and social media, all of which are listed at the Provo City website, provo.org. Many issues also may be addressed directly by telephoning 311. Thank you. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Please state your name and city of residence.
Pam Jones, Provo. I'm vice chair in the Edgemont neighborhood, and there's been a problem in the last few months. I'm right along the borderline between the Edgemont neighborhood and the Indian Hills neighborhood. And at one of those points, there's a resident who wants to have a business where he uses a heavy-duty commercial truck. And some of the neighbors have complained. That matter is going to the Board of Adjustment. But there's been another complication. Last week, his next-door neighbor called me and said, aren't there any restrictions in Provo about idling a vehicle? And I said, well, I'm sure there is. She said that the man had been idling this big truck for as much as 45 minutes at a time. And one night, he was using his wood-burning stove, and there were great clouds of black smoke coming out. She has asthma, and she ended up having to go to the emergency room because she couldn't breathe. I called the city, 311. They referred me to the county department. It has a long name, but it has to do with environmental quality. And they told me that Provo City, I don't know if it applies to all the cities in the county, but idling a vehicle on private property is not a violation. But he said, using a wood-burning stove on a no-burn day is a violation. I know the mayor has had, since he was first elected, one of his main priorities is to try to clean up the air quality in Provo. And I'm just wondering if the council could look at the ordinances that can be tightened up to prevent idling and so on that the county doesn't enforce.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Are there other comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. Our first item of business is a public hearing on a resolution amending the general plan to include Provo Downtown Streetscape Standards in a new appendix. This will be presented by Austin Corey, the planner.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Municipal Council. Appreciate the opportunity of bringing this forward to you. One of our goals is to implement the plans that oftentimes you see in front of you. And these downtown streetscape standards are part of that implementation process. The general plan specifically makes this statement, a policy statement to define the desired urban form with emphasis on enhancing the pedestrian scale and relationships to the planned environment through carefully articulated form and design standards. These similar statements to this occur in Vision 2030, as well as in the Downtown Master Plan that was just adopted last April. These standards are to provide a clear expectation from developers as they come in so that they understand what's expected of them for the streetscape portion of a development process, as well as helping to define for the city what it is that we'll build as we make improvements. You know, if a sidewalk breaks up in the downtown area, what do we replace it with? In the past, there's been a general standard, but it's never been formalized in policy and clearly written to where everybody can understand what the expectation is, and that's the intent of this document. There are some other standards that exist through ordinance that regulate things like cafe dining and the like. This one is specifically to address what we saw as a whole to this policy statement that exists. So With that, I believe that all of you have received a copy of the proposed standards. The only thing I would like to point out is there was a small change that's happened since the work meeting 2 weeks ago. On page 6 of the document, there was a part number that changed. I don't know if you care that much about it, but we're going to throw it out there. The uplight that we are integrating with the tree grates, the part number had to change through some discussions with the manufacturer of how they were getting that to integrate and things. So the uplight still exists and everything, but the exact number we needed to change in there for that reason. But with that, I'd welcome any questions that you might have. I'd be happy to address them.
Yes, I've got a couple of questions. I look at the amenities section, and I see some of those nice things. Who would be, who puts those in? The developer puts in, and he'd be responsible for the maintenance of those things, even though they're on public property?
No, so this is city right-of-way.
City right-of-way, yeah.
Streetscapes.
So who puts those
City
amenities in? Would the developer then put them in and be responsible for the maintenance of those? Or does the city put those in, since it's in their right-of-way, and maintain them? I have somebody in front of one of my office buildings. The city comes by and picks up grateful for the garbage can, and I know that they take care of it for me. Is that the way it is with all these amenity sections?
Yeah, so it would happen much like everything in the city right-of-way occurs right now, to where if it's development driven that causes the change. Now, one thing to note, I guess I'll back up a little bit. This doesn't dictate that tomorrow the city's going to go out and start tearing things up and just replace everything with what exists here. This is to establish the vision of what will occur as development happens or as routine maintenance occurs. So if it's development driven, in that a developer comes in and they want to build a project on a particular site, they would have to bring the streetscape up to those standards. So they'd pay for the initial improvements, but the ongoing maintenance is the city's responsibility.
Except that the city doesn't always do that, because I get to maintain my sprinkling system and cut the grass and plant the flowers that I want in those areas. And so that's where I wonder where we come into those type of things.
Yeah, so something like shoveling the sidewalk.
Shoveling sidewalks.
That would be just exactly how it is right now, where although that is in the city right-of-way, you're responsible for that's adjacent to your property.
And so the new things that are put in would be maintained by who?
Well, I guess it depends. So if we're talking like a power pole or a street bench or something, that would be the department. So the city would be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of that. But if it's shoveling a sidewalk or you have a sprinkler line that breaks, with the exception of Center Street, you would be responsible for those. Now, the reason Center Street's excluded is because it's actually a designated park on our park
Absolutely.
system. Absolutely,
I remember that. So that's just one question I had. The other question that I had is, I look at the picture that's presented for trees, and I don't know how those trees can survive in that 2-foot hole. And I wondered, what are we doing for looking at trees on Center Street and on University Avenue? Because I know that one of the problems with our trees on Center Street is there's nowhere for them to expand, to get the root system. Yeah. And I look at what we've got here in the picture, I'm not sure how that fits in. They're beautiful right now. Can they be maintained? I need the forester to help me with that.
So it's funny you mentioned that. Aside from the amenities dictating, a paver type and tree grate types and things like that, one of the biggest focuses of this document is actually long-term tree health. And that's specifically why that's an entire section even in here. Now the image you're looking at is just a representative picture. It's not necessarily what our standard is. But it is similar that there's what looks to be a small opening. But if you actually turn to the very last pages 8 and 9, you'll see some installation standards. One of the key things that's being changed from what currently exists now is a requirement for structural soil. And the purpose of that is it actually provides a structural support for concrete. So if you build sidewalks and things, what's typical is they come in, they create a base layer, and they compact it really, really hard. And then they come in and pour concrete over the top of that. And that's what trees usually struggle with, is because it inhibits root growth. Structural soil actually creates voids that the tree roots can grow through, but it maintains a structural capacity that it can still bear the weight that the concrete was supposed to bear. So I know that's a long way of answering your question, but the point is we're actually increasing the long-term health of our trees through this standard.
Thank you.
You bet.
Are there other questions? So I have a question on the raised planters, seat walls. It's on that same page we were on, I think page 6, at the bottom of page 6. So we're encouraging people to sit there on the edge of the planters, or is that just a seat wall means something different? I don't know. When I saw that, I thought that was encouraging people to sit on the edge of the planters.
Yeah, now most of the amenities and things that you see in here, what we try to do is dictate, if you're going to implement this, this is what it needs to look like. So this doesn't necessarily say you have to have a seat wall here, here, and here, but it says when you build a seat wall, this is the standard and this is what it looks like. So the first is developers are really the ones that are going to drive that, and it'll come with city input as well, obviously, too. So it will be specifically identified a location where a seat wall would actually benefit. And so in that case, yes, we would absolutely expect people to be using them as seats. It's
like outside a restaurant or something like that?
Expensive seating to be able to create, you define a line and an edge, that creates a space, and then you give somebody someplace where they can sit and rest for a while. It really helps enhance the downtown environment. So.
Okay. Mr. Stewart?
Where did all these standards come from? I mean, it's pretty complete.
So the standards are it's a product of community development, but we work together with Public Works Department and our Parks Department and our Power Department, brought all the heads together and talked about really what we wanted to see and how we needed to achieve that. So I guess the answer to your question is it came from the city.
Looking through it, it's pretty complete.
Thank you.
Like it. So again, let me clarify. We don't go back on people that are already there, but new development will be required to meet these standards.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Connect?
So in your street lighting, it says black enamel, aluminum. Seems like we used to be doing green. So we're changing over our color scheme.
Yeah, actually over the last few years, we've already been in that transition. It's just never been memorialized. And so every now and then you see suddenly a green street pole will show up in a new location. So again, I think this is just as much for the city to be aware of what our standards are and the direction we want to head as it is for informing developers too.
Okay.
But yes, the new standard is to go to black.
Are there other questions? Under long-term replacement strategies on page 3, the third bulleted paragraph, where it says a replacement strategy plan shall be submitted to the urban forester for approval prior to removal. Oh, okay, it was changed. That was fixed then. It was before it said approve prior to the removal of any tree. Was that just currently or just recently fixed?
I believe in the one that went to Planning Commission, there was a spelling error in there. That might be what you're referring to.
Oh, okay.
But by the time it came to work session, we had caught that.
You had fixed that. Oh, okay.
That was actually something that a member of the Planning Commission noted, that there was a spelling error in there.
Yeah, sorry, that's my quirky thing too. So I noticed it on the prior rendering. So, are there other comments or questions, Mr. Harding?
I'd like to make a quick comment to commend community development and all of the other departments that work together on this. I got to see this as a member of the Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee, and was presented it again in the work session. And every time I've looked at it, I've been very impressed at how complete it is, and what a great resource this will be for both the city as well as developers that come in. I know UTA has been very excited to see this kind of vision so articulately given to them, so they know exactly what we're looking for and how to put in something that will mesh with the rest of the city. So I just want to commend you for your work on this. Thank you.
And a shout out to Mr. Corey for the illustration, the cover piece, right? I don't know if we can show that up there, but that was his artwork. So really nice. Very talented. So are there any other questions for Mr. Corey? I'll entertain a motion. Oh, yeah, public comment. Sorry, we did say we would open this up for public comment. So we will open this up to the public. If there's anyone who would like to comment on this item, please come to the podium, state your name and city of address, and please limit your comments to a couple of minutes. Seeing no public comment, we will close the public comment portion of this item and bring it back to council for discussion if there is any, or a motion. Mr. Sewell?
I move to approve the resolution as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Harding? Any discussion? All in favor? The voting is affirmative or unanimous in the affirmative. Thank you. The final item is a public hearing on an ordinance amending Provo City Code Sections 14.06.020 and 14.34.230. And this item will be presented by Mr. Brian Maxfield, our planning supervisor.
Thank you. This item originated with our attorney's office in trying to come in compliance with some state code sections. There are basically two areas it covers. One is dealing with residential facilities for persons with disabilities. Current, or at least recent court cases kind of bring into question whether or not you can establish distances between these types of residences. So in essence, this basically removes that distance requirement. The second deals with the definition elderly person, residential facilities for elderly persons. State code has eliminated that section, and because of that, there's one section on elderly person, the definition, that the attorney's office has recommended striking. That is where it says elderly person means a person who's 60 years or older who desires and needs to live with other elderly persons in group setting. And then what's stricken, but who is capable of living independently. The living independently clause could cause some jeopardy on some of the court actions too. So that's the other portion that's been stricken. So it in essence comes down to those two areas, and that we change our ordinance to reflect those state and recent legal findings.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Maxfield?
I've often wondered when you became elderly.
Some of us qualify.
I've been there a while. It's interesting as I read this that at 60 I became elderly.
So you'll find various organizations have different definitions. A lot of federal ones start at 55, so that makes you feel older or better. I'm not sure which way that goes.
Thank you for the ordinance, so it clarified it in my mind.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Maxfield? Okay, thank you. Invite any neighborhood chairs to Guess none are present. Bring it back for council discussion if there's any discussion. Okay, this is, we will take public comment on this item. So if any of the public would like to come to the podium and make a comment, please do so now. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion or for a motion. Mr. Stewart?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve Provo City Code Section 14.06.020 and 14.34.230 residential facility citywide impact.
So the amendment of those ordinances. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Connect. And Mr. Jones, was that stated correctly?
Yes,
As written?
Yeah, the motion to approve the ordinance amending those two sections, that was your intent, Mr. Stewart? Is that correct?
Okay. Okay, thank you. So all in favor? Thank you. The voting is unanimous in the affirmative. So that's the final item of business tonight. So I will look for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Sewell, is there a second?
Adjourn this early?
Absolutely. In fact, someone owes us ice cream.
We should note that we do have ice cream available for you upstairs on the anticipation that you would be done early. However, I do need to mention that we think we should average these, and so